Hello and welcome to the Fair Play podcast. I'm Louise Taylor, a member of the sports team and senior associate in the clinical negligence and personal injury team here at Pennington's Manchester Cooper. In this second series of the podcast, Going for Gold, we're looking at the road to becoming an elite athlete to try and understand what it takes to compete at the highest level of sport. We'll look at a range of stages in the pursuit of gold, from the discovery of talent, the training and coaching process, getting the funding needed to compete, qualification, the competition itself, and what next when an athlete is forced to give up their dream or take a different path. I'm joined by my co-host today, Andrew Hayward, who heads up our firm's sports team and specialises in employment-related sporting disputes.
Thanks, Louise. Our guest today is Andrew Lawrence, a basketball player from and 2012 Olympian. Andrew attended the College of Charleston on a full basketball scholarship and was named in the All-Southern Conference College Team of the Year for 2 years running. During his third year of college, he was called up to the Team GB as the youngest member of the basketball squad going into the London 2012 Olympics. Following graduation, Andrew was selected as a member of the Washington Wizards in 2013 NBA Summer League before beginning his professional career in Zadar, Croatia, with following seasons in Spain, Kosovo, France, and Italy. He returned home in 2019 and now plays for the Surrey 89ers in the top flight of British basketball.
Thanks, Andrew. Andrew's career has not been an obstacle-free one. He's suffered 3 injuries dubbed by experts as career-ending, with an ACL rupture in 2014, various high-grade hamstring tears in 2018 to 2020, and an Achilles rupture in 2022. He was also one of the athletes involved in the NCAA college athletes litigation, where the NCAA and conferences agreed to pay $2.8 million in back pay damages to current and former athletes over restrictions on compensation. Various funding and financial issues within British basketball have also seen his previous clubs, the London City Royals, the Plymouth Raiders, and the most recently Surrey Scorchers, withdraw from the then British Basketball League and cease trading. Thank you so much, Andrew, for coming in today to discuss your journey.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So without further ado, let's crack on with it. So Andrew, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into basketball?
Yeah, I grew up in Woking, Surrey. My dad and mum were both very, very sporty. My mum was she's English and she was a 110-meter hurdler runner, or 100-meter hurdler runner. She was very, very competitive growing up. Was always into sport and doing sport. Currently a PE teacher as well. My dad was a professional basketball player. He went to college in America. He's American. And then he was drafted into the NBA for a short while. So he was actually in the NBA for a while, then pursued his career abroad in South America, ended up in Europe, playing in England, meeting my mother and staying here. So I had a very, very, along with my sister, very, very sporty upbringing. It was kind of, sports every day, lots of different sports. And then I kind of fell into basketball at a bit of an older age.
So obviously coming from good genes.
I would like to think so. I think they like to hear that more than I do.
Thanks, that's funny. Okay, and I suppose following on from your US roots, which could partly answer the question, why did you choose to go to the US for college, and how does the system over there differ to the UK?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So I did sixth form college over here, looking to go to the university options. I was currently playing for Great Britain Under-20s at the time in the European Championships abroad, and I was playing quite well, and a few of the schools offered me started to show some interest in me to come playing at their schools. I didn't really know too much about it. Obviously, my dad knew a lot more. So we started to look down into that type of route. I was really excited about it, actually. The schools were very, very, the recruiting process is very strenuous. I had over 35 schools kind of, contacting me daily, sending me stuff. And then I narrowed it down to a couple of the schools that I wanted to go to, and then flew out on official visits where I got to tour the campus. They showed me around, put my name up on the big scoreboard at games and stuff. It was a really cool experience, something that I'd never really experienced over here. Growing up in England, basketball it's a good level of sport, but it's not, it doesn't compete with other sports over here, unfortunately. So it was a completely new experience for me. And I'd been to a few universities in England to have a look around their programs just in case as a backup option. And basketball at the university level over here, it doesn't compare. And in my mind at the time, I knew I wanted to try and go professional after college if I was good enough. And I thought the US gave me the best opportunity for that. So it was something that I really, really was excited about. And obviously, I was very fortunate to get a full scholarship, so completely everything was paid for in university, which was awesome. Because I would have struggled otherwise probably to go to university financially. So it was a really, really nice thing for me to do, and something that my dad was extremely proud of, having played there and been there before. It's something that he always wanted me to do as well. So it was a nice added touch.
Yeah, it sounds like it was the right choice.
Yeah, I definitely feel so. 4 years of college was 4 of the best years of my life for sure, and it's something I look back very, very fondly.
Great, thank you.
So keeping the American theme, Louise touched on in the introduction about the NCAA litigation.
Yeah.
And for our listeners who aren't familiar with the NCAA, that's the National Collegiate Athlete Association, which is essentially the organization that regulates student athletes amongst about 1,100 schools across the US. So in regard to that litigation, of course, which you were part of, it was a fascinating piece of litigation that I'm fully aware of. It allowed schools essentially to directly pay players for the first time in its 100-year-plus history of college sports.
Yeah.
The infamous player like Bronny James, LeBron's son, who was paid him $6 million in 1 year at USC, and obviously Caitlin Clark, $3 million in the University of Iowa. Do you think this is a good thing for athletes?
So talking from my own experience, obviously when I was in university, obviously everything was fully funded in terms of a full scholarship, but day to day, I didn't have much money. I didn't have access to a lot of funds in that way. So I would say it's a very different experience now. A lot of the kids that I know are going over to America and are experiencing NIL deals, and it's, putting them in a really good position in future life. So generally, I would say I would like to believe it's a good thing. I think they're going to have to find some way to regulate what happens. I know they're kind of going through those processes now, and obviously America being as big as it is and legislation being so difficult to uphold because it's so different state to state as well. Kids are looking into going to different schools depending on what they can receive from NIL deals. Like I said, I think generally it is good overall. I think in sports, we obviously have a very short career in terms of professionally, especially. So you're kind of capped to your financial ability to earn. So I think it's kind of sets those guys up at a younger age, potentially making a lot of money early, when potentially they only have maybe a maximum of 10 years of earning professionally. And I mean, the average life cycle in the NBA is 3 to 4 years. So I mean, potentially you're out of the NBA within 3 to 4 years after making it. So it's not a long lifespan. So it's something that I think generally is a good thing. I think when I was in school, obviously we had just speaking on my school alone, which was a mid-sized school I chose to go to, we had 5,000 people at every game. All 30 of our games that year were sold out. It was no lack. There was never a lack of people coming to the games and buying merchandise with my name on the back, which I had no rights to earning anything from. We were also in sports games, like video games and stuff. We had our names on the back of the college jerseys. So essentially, they were making a lot of money from the product we were providing without the athletes receiving anything back. So I think it obviously has to be a beneficial relationship to both sides. I think it is a good thing that now generally kids are able to make money and hopefully learning with the right things, hopefully learning how to manage and handle money at a younger age. So when as they're making more money now, hopefully that will be prosperous for the long haul for those guys.
I think that's what's so interesting. What you've touched on there, I think, particularly for our viewers who are not so familiar with US sports, is the size and scale of college sports. I think when you hear the word college, you assume it's like your local UK university. You'd be lucky if you get 10 people as viewers or spectators rather. But as you said, up to 5,000, if not more, attending each game.
So we had essentially, like I said, my school was a mid-level school, but we played against a lot of the bigger schools, so Louisville or Kentucky or North Carolina, and their arenas are 20 to 25,000 people completely sold out watching a college game. We're 18 to 22-year-old kids playing in front of that, and it's an unbelievable experience. I'm just, like I said, I'm kind of glad now that people are able to monetize off of that, and I think so. A lot of the guys, I mean, NIL deal spans across all sports as well. So lots of people aren't making that type of money. You do have to be a certain name and bring a certain aura, I guess, is the the way to phrase it, to make the money, and you have to bring value to the companies that are essentially providing you with the financial gain. But I think it's something that I wish that we had at my age, for sure. I think it would have been a helpful tool for all of us to be able to access. So yeah, I'm glad that it's happening now.
And of course, there's not the end, unfortunately, for the NCAA litigation. They've got a number of other issues to deal with, contend with. Obviously, one of particular interest to me as an employment lawyer is the rights as whether they are employees of the college. So
correct, yeah.
Watch this space for that. Louise.
Yes, yeah, very interesting. And moving on from strictly US talk, can you tell us a bit about your 2012 Olympic journey? We know that you were a third-year college student when you got the call up, but when and where were you when you found out you were in the Team GB squad?
Yeah, so it was one of the proudest moments of my life, for sure. Before that, I'd been playing for GB Under-20s for numerous years, and then I moved up 2 years before that. I moved up into the men's senior squad, and I'd been included in a couple of European championships beforehand, but was, kind of towards the end of the bench, not really playing. So when the Olympic year came around, we had training camp in Houston, actually at the Houston Rockets training facility that year. It was a massive. We had lots of guys competing. It was very, very intense. It's a lot of people that I know obviously from England, but also English Americans brought in as well. So massively competitive environment, which I thrived in, and I was able to earn that spot. We got called into a meeting, and the coaches kind of sat me down, and they kind of acted like I wasn't going to make it at first. So I was a bit disappointed, and then they kind of turned it around and said, obviously you've done really, really well. We expect a lot out of you. We do expect you to be playing and have a role in this Olympic tournament. So that was something that was super exciting to me. I was so proud, so chuffed, and it was a really nice experience as well, because at the time I was obviously still in college, and my thought was still to definitely make the NBA, and I thought that would have given me the best chance to do so. With actually both of the head coach at the time, Chris Finch, and Nick Nurse, who was the assistant coach, are now both head coaches of two respective teams in the NBA as well.
Wow.
It was really good coaching stuff. So I was very, very proud of myself in that way.
Rightly so.
I'm not surprised. So the question, I guess, I certainly would love to know what's it like participating, and not just in Olympics, but home Olympics.
Yeah.
Playing basketball against royalty like LeBron James. What was your most memorable moment?
It was also kind of surreal at the time as well. Again, I was a 21-year-old kid, kind of not really sure of myself yet, but knowing I was very, very competitive. Being in the Olympic Village was insane. You're walking around, you see people like Usain Bolt, Michael Phelps. I never expected to meet those type of people in my life, like the most decorated Olympians ever. And just at the time were just bigger than life, and just being around in the athletes' halls, just seeing all these people it was truly amazing. I think when we lined up against Team USA is probably my most memorable experience on a basketball court to date. We line up, we do the national anthems beforehand, and I'm looking down the court at probably the best team that's ever been constituted ever. There's lots of talk going back eras, Michael Jordan, who's the best, LeBron James or Michael Jordan. Obviously, I've grown up in an era of LeBron James, so I consider him the best ever. So to be facing those guys, the late Kobe Bryant as well, and just the names just go on and on. It was just, the most surreal experience. But like I said, I had massive butterflies before I'd be lining up. But as soon as the ball was tipped, as soon as it was thrown up and we started playing, my mindset was to still make the NBA. So in my mind, I would hopefully be playing against these guys, day in, day out. So for me, the competitive drive kicked in, and it was no respect shown, and just play your game to the best of your ability. And then also we played a lot of other guys. Anyone who follows basketball, we played the Gasol brothers. So we got Power, Mark Gasol. We played for the LA Lakers and Memphis Grizzlies for a long, long time. So the Olympics was filled with NBA players. So it was such a great opportunity for me. And I absolutely loved every minute of it.
Yeah.
I think I'm showing my age here. I was a Scottie Pippen fan. So
awesome player. Yeah, absolutely.
Part of the dynasty at the time. It was incredible. Yeah. But so when you're playing a match like that, and like you say, it's the All-Stars, all the glitz and glamour that America is, but they do walk the walk as well as talk the talk.
For sure.
What's your mentality when you go onto that pitch? Do you do you always believe you're going to win, or could win, I should say? Or do you go with a different mindset because it's the US team?
I think it's a really good question. I think on my part, because I'm so young, there's a bit of naivety to it. It's like whoever we're playing against, I believe we can win. I think if you're competing, if you go in with any other mindset than that, then you're probably you're doing the wrong thing. I think if you're competing to not get embarrassed or competing to come second, I think that's, I wouldn't consider myself a competitor if I thought in those ways, you know. So definitely thought we could win. We definitely didn't win. It was quite a sound beating in the end. So it was quite humbling in that way. But like I said, it was so fun to go out there and compete. And it's, again, being competitive, it was one of the most enjoyable experiences I've had, because I think you get to see physically, mentally where you are against the very best potentially ever to do it. So it was something that I don't take for granted, and something that I still hold so true to myself today, that I played well in that game as well, which was really exciting for me and my family. And yeah, it was just one of the best experiences of my life for sure.
And like you say, putting yourself in the shop window. That's
exactly that. That's how I saw it. You know, I was the youngest guy on our team, and I think they had a guy named Anthony Davis who's gone on to be an NBA absolute superstar now. But me and him at the time were the two youngest on the floor, and it was just quite cool that I was given that experience still being in college. And yeah, just like I said, it was an unbelievable experience. And hopefully I took my chance as well as I could as well, which I was proud of myself in that way for as well.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Great, thank you, Andrew. And then that maybe launched you into your, well, not necessarily planned, but you spent most of your professional career in Europe.
Yeah.
And then moved on to England, Surrey 89ers. And I suppose a question I'm interested in is, why do English athletes choose to play abroad, whether that be Europe, America, or elsewhere?
Yeah, it's another tough question, and a lot of English guys unfortunately do have to go abroad to make a good living for themselves. Unfortunately, the level in England is growing. It's been growing for the last couple of years, but it's not where it needs to be. And that's, I mean, for a bunch of reasons, which I'm sure we'll get into later. But essentially, I felt that the best standard of professional basketball was abroad at the time. I mean, obviously it's the NBA, and then there's a trickle down after that. It's in probably a lot of other countries in Europe before, unfortunately, you come back to England in that way. Just from everything, how professionally things are run. So essentially, when I started playing, I was given, you know, obviously a very, very good contract, which was fully guaranteed. We had, you know, we were given and issued our own individual cars. We had our own 2 or 3 bedroom apartments. We got flights for our families. There was lots of perks to being in a professional lifestyle. Unfortunately, England, we're still ways away from having those type of things implemented over here. So for me, it was, you know, Spain is considered probably the best league outside of the NBA domestically, as well as France, Italy, and some of the other places I played in as well. So kind of putting myself up against the best, with the intention also to try and get back into the NBA. And if you're playing at the, you know, those heights, the NBA was looking constantly at those levels as well. So it was kind of a conglomerate of things that made me choose to, you know, play abroad.
Yeah, absolutely. And where did you like best that you played? Where have you played in Europe?
I've been very lucky. I played in some beautiful, beautiful places. I played in Zadar in Croatia, which is right on the water. It's absolutely beautiful. I played in San Sebastian in Spain. For anyone that knows it, it's beautiful. Right on the beach.
The Pinchos is incredible.
The Pinchos is incredible. I definitely put on weight out there as well for sure, every day. But yeah, I'd probably, and my most enjoyable moments in basketball have definitely been in Italy, because I had a bigger role in the team. It was, you know, something that I really enjoyed having. But in terms of lifestyle, probably I would say Spain or Croatia were the 2 places that I enjoyed living the most, for sure.
Ooh.
So on to sort of the sort of current state of play of the basketball in the UK.
Yeah.
So obviously, there's a lot of news in a few months ago with regard to the dissolution of the British Basketball League. And on the more positive note, the creation of the Super League basketball.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I mean, just explain to us a little bit about your views on the current status of basketball in the UK and what's the future hold for us.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think generally it's going in the right direction. It was unfortunately, it was looking shaky for a while because of basically we had the previous owner of the BBL, which was 777, which tried to essentially buy Everton Football Club. That was how a lot of stuff came out. they had their license removed from hosting any professional basketball in the country, as of various numerous investigations were going on into them at the time, which led to the dissolution of the BBL as such. So we were very lucky that the teams kind of came together and took it upon themselves to kind of form this new SLB that we have now. And in that way, we're moving in the right direction. You know, we've just signed a good partnership deal with The Zone, the streaming company. So all our games are on that platform, which is a really good thing. And the league's also signed I believe they had the deal in place last year, but there's a deal now for the whole league sponsored by Reebok as well. So a big commercial sponsor coming in, taking over the league from a clothing standpoint as well, which is beneficial and, you know, makes the whole product look a bit more professional and uniform. So generally, I think we are going in the right way. We've started our season now, and the product is pretty good on the floor. The caliber of players we have is definitely increasing as well, which is a really positive aspect. But like I said, we've got to keep pushing forward. There's lots and lots of things that we need to do to be in a better situation moving forward at the professional level of basketball. I have a lot of thoughts of as I'm sure most people do in British basketball, the best ways to go about those. I think initially we need to grow the grassroots level. I think from a strategic standpoint, we have to be accessible to everyone in the country from a young age. I think a lot of people in England don't know necessarily the rules of basketball or that we even have a professional league. But I think growing the foundation of people understanding and knowing the game of basketball at a young level, like they do in a lot of other countries, I think is the start to growing something like longer term. Because I think if you know about basketball, if you enjoy it at a young age, you're potentially going to follow it for the rest of your life. I don't play football. I watch football from a young age. I follow Premiership every day. So it's something that I'm hoping that we can kind of create. But I think that does start at a grassroots level with lots of kids. Like right now in England with basketball, I believe we're the second most played sport at youth level, as a team youth level. I think we've got over 1.3 million participants at, you know, playing basketball like on a regular basis. But with that, we also will need more funding, which comes from the National Lottery for us. I think it's a small figure, like 500,000 for basketball, and that many people playing those type of figures, the maths don't add up in that way. And I know a lot of other sports generally get a lot of funding, and I believe it's generally given out to medals given out to sports that they believe can medal. But I think France and Spain have had for the last 20 to 30 years a plan of how to grow sports in that way, and it does take that long. It does take that investment at a young age and young level to eventually become a world superpower in the sport. So I think until we start investing for the long term rather than the short term, I think we're going to kind of be in the same cycle we're in now, which is moving forward, but at a pace that we all want it to move a lot faster in, you know.
Of course, but I guess also one major bold move was obviously the unification of the men and women's game.
Yeah.
And it was only recently announced the commercial broadcasting rights with DAZN, which is obviously really important strategically. And for those who want to watch the basketball, obviously they can watch it for free.
Yeah. Which is nice. It's nice not behind a paywall. You know, I think we need to, because of where we are with the sport, with needing to get the word out and get people watching. That's probably the best way to do it, rather than it being behind a paywall and people that might stump people initially. If you're not into basketball, I don't know if you're going to pay initially to watch it on TV. Whereas hopefully, if with this platform now, everyone can kind of have access to it and it can be shared throughout, you know, communities.
Great, thank you. Moving on to your career journey and the struggles or obstacles you've had to overcome. You've had some quite serious injuries, an ACL rupture, your Achilles, and they've, as we said at the beginning, they were described as potentially career-ending. How did you recover from those injuries and get back to playing?
Yeah, obviously injuries are a big part of sport. We all kind of know it. Much harder to go through when you're actually going through it. It's a bit harder than those words. Yeah, so I tore my ACL in 2000, I believe it was 2013. So right after my first professional career season. It was a tough one. I'd never had any injuries before, you know, ankle sprains, literally nothing. So it was a big injury, which kept me out for a year. That was mentally quite difficult. I have a really, really good support system from family and friends, you know, so I always feel like I can rely on people and lean on them in hard times. Fortunately, I had a lot of teammates that had similar injuries in their career, and I'd seen them come back, you know, better, stronger, faster, quicker. So it was something that gave me a lot of hope. So I wasn't too down about it in terms of coming back, but I think I really learned to be patient, which I think isn't necessarily one of my best attributes. So I definitely learned to have some patience with the recovery and making sure I'm doing the right things rather than, you know, rushing back and just playing before I was allowed to, or, you know, skipping steps. It really taught me that process, which was, like I said, it was a valuable experience, to be honest with you. And I think it's made me mentally a lot stronger. You know, I think I feel I can deal with a lot of things because of the injuries that I've had, knowing I can come back. So I believe I can bounce back and I can be better than before, no matter what phase of life that's in. So it's something that from each injury, they've come at different points in my life. I would obviously prefer not to have had them.
Yeah.
But having had them, I try and put a positive spin on it, you know, and think I've learned and grown in those ways. That's hopefully made me mature, and, you know, I'm a better person, maybe, hopefully, because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting. Thank you.
I guess sort of a sort of roundup of the talk. I'm interested to get your view on the future. What are your hope for aspiring British basketballers? Will the Super League basketball one day rival the European leagues?
Yeah.
Even the mighty NBA. And, you know, how will that then enable us to? Do you think that will then enable us to retain homegrown talent?
I think that has to be the big push. You know, I think it has to be a way for us to retain homegrown talent, because that's the only way I think you can realistically grow the league, and people that will be invested in the league rather than imports coming in. It's, you know, based on English players providing a really good product over here, which is essentially what happens in other countries. It's the domestic players are really, really good, and then the imports are like the icing on the cake rather than it being the other way around. I think there's a lot of things that need to potentially happen for that. Currently, right now in the SLB, we have the league structure is there's no relegation, so the teams that are just in the top league. I think a way to potentially promote a more competitive environment is to potentially have a relegation zone, or where teams can drop out and teams can come up to the top league. I think that's a way to, you know, potentially change and modernize what we're doing here. I think that would be beneficial. And then what we've actually, so there's a lot of pathways in England, and I think hopefully the Surrey 89 has now created a really good one, which I'm actively working in, and I think this would potentially be a really good way to keep English kids at home. So essentially we have academies, so sixth form or college academies, who they're technically under our banner. So we have, you know, academy league games, and we practice every day. We also have the University of Surrey. We have players that go to the University of Surrey as well. So these guys are practicing every day with each other. So we're trying to keep and get the best English kids to stay over here, compete daily with each other, with the pathway leading to the professional setup. So the better kids that are competing every day and doing well in these matches and practice every day, they then get a chance to compete after our practices.
Right.
Sorry, after their practices with us at the professional level. So it's a clear, direct pathway, you know, from 16-year-old kid to a 24-year-old professional, where and how you can make it while school is still at the forefront. So I think there are a lot of other good academies in the country, and I think it's something that needs to keep progressing. But I think we're the only academy in the country that has a direct pathway to the professional setup. So that's something that I'm taking a lot of pride in doing. And, you know, something that I think that can long-term be super beneficial, because I think if we can grow the product enough, kids won't have to go to America. They won't have to explore opportunities outside, you know, outside of England. They can stay here. We can produce better talent, hone them into the ways that they'll benefit English basketball, both on a domestic level, but also internationally. With GB basketball struggling in the last few years, I think it's something that we need to be, you know, having in-house as such, rather than, you know, everyone's here, there, and everywhere, kids playing together, which is what happens in a lot of other places, and why places like Spain and France are so dominant. Just a quick, when I was in France, they do something very similar they have relegation from Pro A, which is the first league, and Pro B is the second league. And then what happens is so when you have a team, you play wherever you play your under-20s team, it's called an Aspire team, play beforehand. So they'll play in the same arena, in front of the same fans, you know, before your game, you can watch the under-20s, and then generally the 2 or 3 best players on that team will then sit on the bench for the men's team as well, with able to get minutes when injuries and things like that happen. Essentially, that's what we're going to try and create here with this Surrey 89ers pathway. And I think it's something that, again, can really help English basketball in the long run, and getting, you know, homegrown talent to be playing at a young age professionally.
Yeah, giving them that exposure at an early age, which they wouldn't get, you know, somewhere else.
Yeah, definitely so.
And especially especially when you said it's like, that surprised me that that the statistic that's the second most played sport seems madness that these things aren't happening already. So well done for doing it all.
Thank you. We're trying, we're pushing. So hopefully it keeps going in the right directions, and then we keep growing this the way it needs to be grown.
I think there's an air of excitement because obviously, you know, various different sports, there are disruptors at the moment, you know, right across from the main sports through to less mainstream sports. You know, and basketball, which by rights, when you think about the NBA, it should be a mainstream sport, but at the moment, obviously in the UK, it's not. That must be a really exciting time because, as you said, you know, you might be introducing relegation to make things a bit more interesting. You to be involved in a sport that essentially is so established but yet so young, in the sense of a creation of a new league, it must be a really exciting time.
Well, that's the thing. It is super exciting because I think, like you said, we can kind of hopefully craft this in the best way possible. And I think we've got a lot of people that are involved in English basketball now that have, you know, been there, done it at the highest level as such. So we can now come back and scope this and frame it in the way that we know what's best for especially the kids coming through. I think, you know, in the next 10 to 15 years, it's paramount that we are producing top flight players that can go on to play in the NBA, and that can be developed here. Just as a reference point, France right now have the last 2 or 3 NBA drafts, they've had the top, you know, 4 or 5 picks all be from France. So they haven't been American, they've been French-born players. I think talent-wise, as a talent pool in England, we have a very similar talent and demographic base as France. I think it's now providing the right coaching, the right funding, the right sponsorship for all these guys to have the chance to do that, because I really believe in the long run we can rival any of those countries and getting that amount of guys to the NBA. And if not, they're staying at home playing in a really competitive league that again rivals, you know, a France or a Spain or any of these leagues that are seen as some of the best outside of the NBA.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Andrew. That's so interesting and informative. I feel like I've learned a lot, and thanks again.
Thank you guys for having me. It's been really fun.